In this video, I'm going to look at a Noresco 4364 with a dual 1214 turntable on it. This was a Canadian-made not a receiver, it's an amplifier with a German dual turntable. And these things were better than people remember. I get asked by people all the time about my little CRT clock and how I made the little CRT clock. There's nothing magical about this, okay? This is just a flash file that is playing in a browser on an old BlackBerry. I'm using an old BlackBerry Z10. Remember, the old BlackBerries supported flash playback natively. So you could play any flash file on it. It just opens up in the browser as a regular file. It's just a little tiny file, little SWF file that was loaded on an SD card and copied onto the internal memory. And I can just open that file. And I don't just have this one, as you've seen the other one that I usually have on there. I have a bunch of different clock displays. And some of them were apps, and a lot of them are just flash files like this. And that effect you're seeing there, by the way, is just the shutter on the camera. It's just running on an old BlackBerry 10. The beauty of the old BlackBerry 10s is they had an HDMI output. So the HDMI output is going through a converter which encodes it as a regular NTSC video signal, and then it goes into a modulator, goes out on channel 40 through the house cable, and this is just a little black and white TV that's plugged into the cable, tuned to channel 40. Nothing really that spectacular about it. I do have other apps that can run that will display clocks, and it's just kind of a neat way of doing it. The nice thing about this is synchronized to the internet, so it picks up the exact time off the internet. So nothing fancy, but if you've got an old BlackBerry smartphone, an old Z10 or a Z30 or any of the ones, or even an old Playbook, you can do it on a Playbook too. I've done it on a Playbook, and they all have an HDMI out, which is really useful. And I know the new smartphones, you can play your content wirelessly on your TV through the new smartphones, no problem. That was all available on the BlackBerries as well. But people wrote them off saying that they were an inferior phone when actually they did a lot more than the phones of the time, right? When the BlackBerry 10 operating system was first launched, these phones did a lot more than the iPhones and the Android phones of the day. And even today, they'll stack right up with them. And I really miss the old BlackBerry 10 operating system. It was my favorite operating system for smartphones. I've been forced to kind of go Android, but I miss the old operating system. But I still kind of play around with these phones because, say, you can't do this on the modern ones. And modern phones don't support flash. These ones do. This is one of my favorite clock displays, this one here. It's all animated, right? And kind of cool. Anyway, that file you can find on the internet. I don't know if you can read it. The guy's name is up there on the top anyway, just not showing up because it's an HD, it outputs as HD, and this is being converted down to standard def. Anyway, that's basically what it is. Nothing mysterious. Okay, anyway, for today's video, a dual 1212 or 1214 turntable. But you can see that there's knobs on this thing. That's because this one has an amplifier built in, and not just any amplifier. This is quite a rare beast. Let's take a look at it. This one here is a Noresco NC4 364. And it's quadra and stereo speakers. Noresco was a brand that was around back in the 1970s, and I mean, we used to, when I worked in the business, the guys on the sales floor would tell people, you got a Noresco, that stuff is crap. But you know what? It wasn't as bad as the sales reptiles that I work with that were trying to sell someone a new Sony system. They would push the stuff off as being just absolute garbage. But I got to work on it, and a lot of it was actually not bad stuff. There's something you don't see very often. Made in Canada. These Noresco units were actually made in Canada, the whole unit, and this is part of my collection now. No, I'm not letting this beast go. We're going to get this thing working if it's not. I haven't looked at it yet. It was given to me, and as soon as I got it, I realized that this is one that I got to keep. Here's the inputs and outputs. It's got a tape record output, a tape play input, and a tuner input. So it has a built-in amplifier, and here's your speaker outputs. Of course, they're using the European DIN type speaker jacks on the back. But I haven't worked on one of these things in a long time, and I remember that they were different. They were different than the Japanese amplifiers that we saw of the day, and maybe that's why the sales guys didn't really like them, because it was different. But I think we'll find when I get into this unit that it's not bad. And I say it's been a long time. I haven't opened up one of these things in probably 25 years, because when we didn't see a lot of them come in, and the ones that did come in, I don't even ever recall having to fix an amplifier on one of these units. We see them come in from time to time, and it was always the same thing. It was always the turntable problem. It was always the gear was jammed up, or the idler was worn out. It was always a problem with the turntable. I never had one that had an amplifier problem. We had the normal, clean the switches, clean the volume control stuff. We had those type of things. But as far as an actual amplifier failure, I can't ever remember repairing one. The sales guys used to do a hell of a job trying to talk people out of fixing them. And the odd person would just scrap it and go and buy a new system, because the sales guys would say, those things are junk, and they'd be selling them a Sony or selling them a Technique system. And in reality, the turntables on these things are probably a lot better than any of the ones that they were selling them, because most people back in those days weren't spending hundreds of dollars on a turntable. They were buying a $100 piece of plastic. And I think the turntable in here is probably better than a $100 piece of plastic. Anyway, we're going to plug this thing in. I'll hook up some speakers to it, first of all, and see if it even works, because there may not be anything wrong with it, and that would be a bonus. As I say, these turntables here are typically damn good turntables, and it looks like it's got a Shure M75 cartridge on it too. So if the needle on here is in good shape, let's just take a look at that. Take a look at the needle first. We push this back, and this will open up. Looks like it's an M75 Type D, and the needle actually looks to be okay. It's not bent or anything. Look at that. A lot of times these will be, people bend the needles and shank will be bent. That one doesn't look to be in too bad a shape. So if the needle is okay, I mean, these ones are readily available, these needles anyway, but this should be a pretty good cartridge. If the cartridge isn't bunged up, it should actually work. Biggest problem with these was these contacts got corroded. So we'll be giving a shot of some deoxit on here when I get into this thing. But workhorses is what these are. But as you guys can see, I have a bunch of different clock apps and clock flash files that I can put on this thing and change them at will. This one doesn't show up so well on a black and white screen because it's actually color app. So the clock dials there show up in color. But anyway, I've got a bunch of them, and usually I just leave the other one on, but I sometimes change it up a bit. Just have to confirm which are the ground pins here, because I'm going to use common grounded speakers, so I want to make sure that I'm not going to short anything else. I'm just going to wrap a couple pieces of solder around my probes here and just insert them in the back. I think it's the big pins are ground. Yeah, the big pins. So there's a big and a small pin. The small little round one, the one that was shaped like a spade, is the ground, and the other one is positive. So we'll just put the speakers in. I only have to ground one of them because it's common ground, right? So I'll stick one speaker wire in, and I'll stick a hot wire in each side. That way I can test the amplifier that's built into this unit. Power cord undone. Get it plugged in. Good sign, it didn't hum. We'll check out the amplifier first before I check out the turntable. So let me plug in my little MP3 player, and we'll see how this thing sounds as an amplifier. So I'm all set. Let's try track 268. See how it sounds. Now I have the bass and treble set at flat. Controls need to be cleaned.
Tick-tock, 6 o'clock, there's that old alarm again. Stand up, eyes shut, wishing I was sleeping in. Don't know how I do it, but somehow I do it every day. through the same routine. White tee, blue jeans, looking at me beckoning.
Other than the controls need to be cleaned, this actually sounds pretty clean, actually.
Other day, as I rush by the mirror, catches my eye and just guess who smiled.
Okay, let's check out the ability of this thing to play a record. Even had the original. It had another one in there that when I pulled it out, it went flying. It's probably on the floor now. But this was, I found this stuck in the back here. So I have the original spindle. So let's just check this out and see. 12-inch record. We'll see if this works. Oh, I think this is gummed. Yeah, it's not turning. So the mechanism is gummed up. So I know what I need to do on this. We'll see if we get sound first of all. Yeah, so the mechanism's gummed up. So I know what I need to do here. I need to take apart the turntable. We get that working. Because, you know, having a working turntable these days is very important considering how vinyl has made a roaring return. And these 1214s were actually not bad turntables. It's a rim drive, right? But it's a 3-speeder, which is nice. Turn off the power, remove the spindle, and it's going to get my screwdriver. We're going to pop out the little clip here, the little ring, without losing it, because a lot of people did that. They let the ring go flying. We don't want that. Okay, got the ring out of here. Now we'll lift up the table assembly. As you can see, motor spinning. That's good. Nothing wrong with the motor. The problem is going to be this wheel is probably, yeah, it's gummed. See, it's not moving up and down because the grease is going to be all dried up on here. So it's not even making contact with the actual motor itself. So to remove these, I'm just going to, actually I'm going to take the cartridge out first so it doesn't get damaged. So remove the cartridge and put that in a safe place where I'm sure it will get damaged. Try not to damage it. Okay, I'm going to remove these screws so that they're loose like this. These are the transport screws, so you can push the unit down and then bring the screws up like this for transportation. We want them in the free floating position so that I can pull them out of the way like this, and then I'll be able to lift the deck up, the turntable up like this, so that I can remove it, turn it up on its side, and whatever. And I'm going to want to unplug the power from it. So there's the power unplugged from the nice big motor on the bottom here. And I should be able to also undo the terminals for the Tonearm. Should be able to unplug the wires from the, this is a switch that shorts the cartridge to ground. Right, there's a short switch here. When the mechanism operating, it moves this contact here, which shorts the output so you don't get a pop. So I can just unplug these wires, undo the little bracket at the back here. And then I can just unplug the cartridge from here. One last wire just doesn't want to let go. It doesn't. I don't want to break it. It's kind of stuck. There we go. Okay, just stuck there a bit. The amplifier is now unplugged. I can now service this out of the unit. But as you can see, the amplifier in here is a nice little amp. And you see, that's another nice thing about these duals. If I wanted to, I could just put another dual deck into here and use this amplifier. I mean, it's not a high power amp by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not a, you know, it's not a no power amp. It's probably, I'm just looking at the transistors here. So this uses the Motorola SJE 5439 and 5440 output transistors. So it's going to be a class, this could be class B bias, it's probably AB. But here's the specs on it. They cross over to an NTE 241 and 242 for the NPN and the PNP. They're complementary transistor audio power amplifier. They have a maximum volts of 80 volts. That's your base to emitter and collector to base voltage. Emitter to base voltage 5 volts. They have a current handling of 4 amps. And the output power rated 60 watts. So 60 watts maximum is what this amplifier could put out if you were giving it the rated voltage. Looks like the capacitor is probably looks like a 50 volt cap here, so we're not running it anywhere near the maximum voltage. This cap looks like it's been replaced at some point in time. That one's been replaced. But conservatively, this unit is probably going to be pushing 35-40 watts per channel, I would think, with this type of design. You know, these are North American transistors. Capacitors look to be really good. They're IEC caps. So this one here has been changed. This is a Sanyo cap. Looks like the original one might have been a big can back there that was attached by wires, and somebody's just gone in and popped that in place of it. But other than that, this thing actually doesn't look to be too bad. As I say, it was a Canadian-made unit, so the quality of these was never really that bad. Although the guys I used to work with used to say they were a piece of crap. They used to call them terrible, horrible units, and sell people devices such as the STR AV570 with an output IC. Anyway, well, I've got this thing apart. I'm going to clean the controls here because the controls need it badly, and then we'll work on getting the turntable working. And I tell you, my afternoon was full of excitement today, as just as I was setting up to shoot this video, I got interrupted by one of those phone calls from someone claiming to be from Windows. So I just had to cast out a line with a big chunk of bait stuck on the end of it and see if he would bite. And I reeled him in slowly and called him out at the end too. That video should be up online by now, I would think, because I've already gone ahead and edited it. I wasted an hour and a half of his time, and I tell you, that's like gold to get these guys. And I got him pissed off. He was laughing. He says at the end, he goes, "Ha ha ha! I screwed you. I've got your computer broken." No, you don't. I had the thing fixed in a few minutes, but. You know, these guys are, I kept them on the phone so he wasn't ripping somebody else off. I'm just waiting for my iron to heat up a bit here so that I can, I'm just going to take the shield off so I can clean the controls in behind here. Also, you may have noticed a copper band wrapped around the transformer here. This is actually to shield the transformer, to cut down on any magnetic influence that will radiate from the transformer. So it was common practice to wrap a strip of copper around it and basically bond it. So that will try to minimize the influence of magnetic field that's going to radiate out of the transformer from the winding here. So this provides a bit of a shield to try to keep the hum down. So what I want to do here is I just want to take off this metal shield that's soldered to the side here so that I can get at the controls underneath it. So I'm just going to heat up the solder here. That way I can lift the shield out of the way to get to the input switches underneath here and the volume controls here. So that way I can get in there with my cleaner and clean up the control. I'll use the good stuff on this one. Control, or the switch, I should say. So just clean the switch a bit. And I can get into the volume control here too, just as easily. These ones, the controls are actually quite easy to get at on here. There's the volume control. I'll do the same for the other controls. Balance. And then we have the bass and treble controls over here. That's the front control. I still got to get it to the back control. Okay, that should have the controls clean. Now we work on the actual turntable. Now this unit, of course, we saw that it had two sets of speaker outputs. It had front and rear. It has a little switch on the front that says rear speakers on or off, and then it says stereo or quadra. What that does is, and it's probably easier to demonstrate this with a drawing, so let's look at a drawing on how this works. So here's how this setup works. You've got your left and your right outputs coming from the amplifier, and they're connected to the positive terminals for the front speakers, the right and the left output. The ground is connected to both the negative terminals. Those are your speakers, right? This is not a connection together. That's supposed to be a representation of the speaker jacks. Your rears are the same. You've got your positive and negative terminals. The left and right outputs go to the rear speaker switch. So when the switch is off, there's nothing sent to the rear speakers. When it's on, your positives are connected to the positives of the front. The negatives of the rear speakers go to this quadra switch, so that when it's in stereo mode, when you flip the switch up to stereo, they are connected back to ground and they run in parallel with the front speakers. But when you flip that switch to quadra, here's what happens. The signal is going to go into the speaker. It's going to come out of the speaker on the negative terminal. It's going to go into the other speaker on the negative terminal, and it's going to return on the positive to the other positive side. And what you've basically done is you've created yourself a basic surround sound system. Because the only sound that it's going to come out of the two rear speakers, they're going to be obviously a mono channel. This is how Dolby Surround worked, right? Dolby Surround added a fourth channel. They actually took the two front speakers and they connected them together to form a mono channel. But the basic surround system before the center channel was added was just this. Your left and your right information and your rear information became a left minus right, because if you've got the same signal, if it's a mono signal going to both speakers, you'll hear nothing out of the rear speakers, because the two waveforms both rising together and falling together will cancel each other out. But any difference between the left and the right will be heard from the rear speakers. So for example, if you had a bass guitar playing and it's playing center, you'll hear nothing out of the rear speakers. But if your music you're listening, there was a trumpet that was playing off to the right, off center, but still on both channels, but at a reduced level on the left channel, that signal would also apply to the rear channels, and you would hear that trumpet coming from behind you, plus any ambience, because the channel, the same signal arriving at the left microphone, especially if it was a live performance recorded with two microphones, there would be the time delay from the performer playing that's picked up by the two different microphones, which would be a phase delay on the opposite channel. So that would give you that ambient sound. And so what you get is you get the surround channel. It's poor man's surround. We used to do it before they had it built into units like this by just taking the two positive terminals and running it to a rear speaker or to two rear speakers. And it did exactly the same thing. Anyway, that's how this Quadra system works. Pretty simple stuff. I always like to service these units and use the base to hold it because it gives you a cavity that you can set the tone on over. It gives you a cavity that you can set the tone arm over so that you're not damaging anything. On this one here, this mechanism here is completely glued. It's completely gummed up, but nothing's broken in here. So basically what I need to do is I need to get in here with some probably WD-40, and we'll let it soak into here and free up this bearing that's stuck. And we'll do the same. We'll clean the grease. This one doesn't even have any grease in it, or it looks like it's been cleaned out at one point. It needs to be re-lubricated, but it's pretty dry. Anyway, let's get the WD-40 working right down here on this bearing. Get that freed up. There we go. Just like that. That is now free. WD-40 works like magic for certain things, and this is one of them. When you get mechanisms that are gummed up like this, it really frees them up. A little more of it in here just to make sure that the bearings stay free flowing. This one's even got a pitch control on it. See the pitch control here? Moves this up and down ever so slightly, and that's all still working too, which is great. Probably wouldn't hurt to open up the motor and see if we can look at the bearing caps on this thing and lubricate the motor as well. So we'll take out the screws here for the bearing caps. That way we can put some oil right down into the bearing itself. Lift this off. I should be able to lift that off there. Yep. And you can get into the bottom bearing here as well. Just like that. We'll put some oil down into the bearing here. Make sure it's nice and lubricated because I want this thing to last a long time. These turntables are valuable and you have to look after them. For this I'm going to use just standard 3-in-1 electric motor oil down onto the shaft here. Let that soak in. Yeah, that's good. It's a lot freer than it was a minute ago. We'll put some more oil down onto the bearing here onto the side, and I'll put some into the actual bearing itself at the back here. Get a good drop or two inside the bearing. Put the bearing together and let it spin a bit. Now before I fire this thing up, I'm going to actually make sure that I'm going to clean off this with a Q-tip just to make sure any excess oil that's on the shaft here isn't going to get worked into the drive pulley, because of course that could cause slippage and we don't want that. Okay, I can put the rotor back in. I got to get this around here. Like that. I think that's how it went on. I just want to make sure nothing's going to rub. Yeah, that's good. That's right. Make sure there's nothing going to rub on the motor itself once it goes together. Okay, the motor's now back together and everything's turning smoothly. Just going to make sure that the bearings are snug so that they won't come apart, the end caps. That's good. Next, we'll deal with the grease. This actually looks like this is a stacker. You could run a stacker on this, you see. I don't have the spindle for a stacker, but actually the other spindle that was stuck in there, it looks like it was the stacker spindle, and somebody cut it off to make it the non-stacker symbol because they lost this. I found this just sitting in the back here, inside the edge here. But I have a feeling that they thought they lost the standard single play spindle, so they cut the other one that was for the record stacker, which would be nice to have because it wouldn't be complete without it being a stacker. This is a stacker mechanism. That's what this does, is when the record recycles and starts over, this operates to drop the next record down. So I may have to find a stacker spindle for this thing just so that I've got one so that it's complete, because it's nice to have one of these things with all the parts and nothing missing, right? I'm just going to turn this over so we can look at the operation of the mechanism here. You'll see that when I move this, this makes contact now. Everything is free. And this bearing looks to be okay back here. I don't see any problem with that one. So let's deal with, that needs to be lubed as well. Let's deal with the automatic mechanism now. So how this operates is the gear is driven and turns the mechanism like that. Actually, it's not jammed up, it's free. This sometimes gets stuck. This is the reject lever for depending on whether you're starting a record over from the beginning or whether the record is ending, and that sometimes gets stuck, but it's not in this case. I'm just going to put some of the yellow grease down in the track here to lubricate it, and then we'll give this thing a try. I'll lubricate the main bearing as well, and we'll give this thing a try because this thing looks like it's about ready to go. Kick that out the other way so that groove goes the other direction. Okay, I think it's time to turn this thing over and see how the top side looks. What kicks this when the record is done, when it gets to the end, this little lever here pushes over and it pushes up against a little spring that triggers the mechanism to turn. And if this is turning, it'll turn the gear this way. So that's the stop position there. if we look down in here, you'll see a little lever. And when I move the tone arm over, it'll push that little lever over like that. That's what engages the auto stop. So then it picks the tone arm up and it should bring it back. Which it does. Okay, I think that part's going to work. We'll put some oil down here on the shaft for the turntable so that that'll spin freely. Put the turntable back on. I think this lever here is gummed up. So we have to just check this other lever on the front here. It's going to remove the turntable again. I think this lever here is gummed up too. So I'm just going to give a bit of a shot of WD-40 into the shaft here. And into here. To free up this mechanism. And maybe a little down into here. Free up that little lever. One place you don't want to spray a bunch of WD-40 is you don't want to put any around in this area here. This is the friction pad that is used to move the tone arm back and forth. So you don't want excessive lubricant in this area here, or your tone arm's not going to move. Right? So, but you do want it in areas that do pivot. So areas like this area here and around the gear here and this little lever here, for example. This is the spring that when you press this is what it rejects the record. So that moves a little lever back and forth on the top. Okay, I do believe my mechanism is now working properly, so I can put the clip back on here and I can get the mechanism back together and we'll test it out and see how well it works. The reason I'm putting the clip on is so that the turntable doesn't fall over when I turn it over to reconnect the wires to the tone arm. So now I can turn it back up on its side here and get to the wires here. I think it was the green one was on the bottom, right? And the orange one was on the top. Or was it the orange on the bottom? What was it, guys? Was it orange on top or orange on the bottom? So you guys remember? Do you remember what it was? I think I'm going to go to green on the bottom. And orange on the top. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It'll just be the left and right channel will be reversed, but I don't believe I'm wrong. I believe I'm right. Okay, the cover goes back on. This makes contact with both the base and with this. That's what this little foot is for. And this just goes in place kind of like that. And then it snaps in like that. And then these two wires go underneath this little clip that holds it in place. There's only one thing that I have left to do on this, besides put the cartridge back in. that is to clean the contacts for the Tonearm cartridge. So we'll use some Deoxit D100 for that. Wipe those contacts off, and the same with the contacts. Put some on the actual cartridge itself. So I'm just going to spray some of this in here. We'll wipe the contacts down. And this stuff does do a pretty good job cleaning the contacts. We'll do the same for the cartridge itself. Wherever I did with the cartridge, it's over here somewhere. There's our cartridge. We'll spray the back of the contacts here. We'll just put some more on the contacts just to leave some on there when I put the cartridge back in place. Cartridge goes in like that and it's locked in. Now we're ready to test this thing and see how it works. The thing I noticed is it started rotating as soon as I plugged it in, so my power switch is probably sticking a bit, but I want to see whether this thing, the mechanism, will actually go through and play the record. And then we'll check the power switch out. Make sure that it actually plays. And then it should turn the sound on. And we should hear sound. No sound. Interesting. We get sound here. We get sound here. Wait a minute. Oh, that might not have been pushed up all the way. Try that again. The little circuit board can slide down on these and not make a connection. I think that's what happened. Yes. Have that cranked up too loud. That works. We're getting there. Stop. Will it reject? Remember, the mechanism was all gummed up before I started on here, so this should stop, but what's not going to happen is the record's not going to stop turning because the little AC switch is not working. But that part works. So now I got to take this apart again. I don't have to take the turntable apart. I just have to lift the turntable out and see why that switch isn't releasing. But that is excellent. Yeah, that is excellent. So we'll continue. We'll get this thing going tonight. To access the switch, I have to once again remove the turntable. Like that. Turn it on its side. The switch is going to be inside here. This is the lever that controls it. Oh, it's sticking right down here. I can see it. So it's actually part of this that's sticking still. So we'll just put some more WD-40 down into here because that's where it's sticking. It's right, I think, right in here. Take that clip off. So we can lift this mechanism piece out. And lift this one off if I can.
lift that off like that. I'll show you, this comes off over here like that. And the next piece should just lift out of here, I think. This one should just lift off here like this. Yeah, this is kind of gummed up. So we're gonna clean this up too. Okay, that's that piece apart. This is the one that is kind of sticking. So we'll pull this clip off here. See if I can loosen this one up a bit. Just lift it up a bit if I can. See, it's this top part that's kind of gummed up. So see if I can get some lubricant down in through there to free it up a bit. There we go. It's starting to free up now. Of course, this is an adjustment, right? I'm just going to put some heat on here as well. First, I'm going to face the heat away from the plastic gear here. Heat up the bracket a bit, and it will probably cause the oil to penetrate a little better. We want to keep the heat away from anything plastic that could melt. Oh yeah, see? It's much better. So I'm going to put some oil on the end of a Q-tip so I can just wipe it in here. I don't want too much. I just want a little dab, a little layer of oil on the back of the mechanism here. Just where the parts make contact so that they're not going to stick. Same with underneath here. There, that is returning its own pretty much now. We'll work this a bit more, and we should be good to put this back together. Okay, as you can see now, when I switch it on, it's going back off on its own. So that's freed up now. So we'll put the clip back on here. Put the mechanism back together and give it another shot and see whether it works. So that clip goes on like that. We have the next two layers that go underneath here. I'm going to lubricate this bearing here with some oil. So we'll just put a little bit of oil on the shaft there. Put that one in place. one drops in place like that. That one drops over top of it like that. And drops on top like that. Another clip goes in on top of this one. Like that. Those are now nice and free. So I'll replug the motor. Hopefully none of that oil that I got in there is dripped onto the turntable. Don't need it slipping. Okay, start. Oh, might help if I have it at the right speed. Oh, okay. Play. Set the weight on this thing yet, so I just want to make sure that it's working as it's supposed to. Then I'm going to play some records on it and test it out. There we go. And it stops. And the power should go off. There you go. Power has now gone off. Unit stops. Turn it on. Power comes on. There's a little light on the front that tells me when the power's on. Because when it's in phono mode, when the AC power switch is turned off, it turns the amplifier on when you go to play a record, which is kind of cool. And at the end of the record, we'll set the Tonearm balance next. So to make sure it picks up at the end of the record, and it picks up, it returns, and it should stop. And there it does. And then the power should turn off a few seconds later. And the power goes off. Done. We're going to set the weight on this thing now. I'm going to set this to 0. And I want to set the counterweight so that this hangs relatively level. So I do that by just a little too low here. I try to get this level. Yeah, it's pretty close. So we'll set this down for about 2 grams and start. I might still have an adjustment that's still out because I think when you pick the Tonearm up, it's supposed to turn on, but there's an adjustment for that. And then on comes the sound. Stop this, it should turn off, but I think one of my other levers might still be out of position a bit. That there is another lever that when you pick up the Tonearm, it operates the switch. Yeah, I think that was still out of adjustment because it should shut off when I do that, but it's not. It's not shutting off until I hit stop. That will be this adjustment here. When you move the Tonearm, it moves this part of the lever here. Watch when I move the Tonearm over, it moves this lever. But I think we're just a little bit off. So I just have to come a bit more. I probably just didn't get this exactly where it was when I tightened it up. So we'll just kick it over just a touch this way, like that. So now when I move the Tonearm, it should be enough to turn the switch on. Like that. Now it's on, and now it should kick off. Yeah, On. Off. Good. That should do it. Last time we'll try cueing the record manually this time. Play side 2 this time on the record. If I pull this up to cue it, power comes on. Whoops. Of course I bumped my speed there again. I have to wait for the mechanism to reset because I obviously had tripped it. Okay. So it'll go off. So if I start it up, position my needle. Okay. There we go. That's better. It should go off now. There it goes. It's off. Start it up. Cueing arm down.
I bet you they won't play this song on the radio.
And I bet you they won't play it on YouTube either. Okay, let's move it over to here. There, I guess it must have been just that one time, because it worked that time. Okay, only one thing we need to do now, and that's to check the speed. But I got a speed disc around. Let me go find it. I know I've got one I made. Let me go find the thing. I was going to show you guys my strobe disc, but then I realized I can't demonstrate my strobe disc because all the bloody fluorescent lights in my shop have electronic ballast on them, and it won't strobe with an electronic ballast. It will only strobe with magnetic ballast. And since I swapped out my ballast, I can't use a strobe disc. You won't see anything. But I do know this album very well. So I'm going to do this by ear, and unfortunately, I can't play this for you guys. I really wish I could, because El Di Miola, hey, on vinyl, this is great stuff. So I wish I could play it, but I can't. So I get to enjoy this. I get to enjoy this and set the speed myself, and well, we'll catch you later. Listen to the pre-echo. There it is. Yeah, this thing sounds great. One of my feet is missing. I'll have to fix that. One of my feet is missing, so if I touch it, it skips. There's a little, I have to put a little penny or something under here. One of my little feet is missing. I have to put a little shim underneath there because it's not quite level, but hey, it sounds great. I'm going to listen to this for the rest of the evening, I think. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one real soon. Bye for now.